Unlocking the truth. New DNA clues in the decades-old JonBenet Ramsey case.
Guilty of crime membership. If you got that membership, please thank Foxy for that. As I queue up this next, yeah, there's a lot. They're talking about it. I mean, we've got simple explanations and we've got detailed explanations and the theories. It's the weirdest thing that the theories, how they can be such vast theories. So new police investigate possible break, and then we'll get into the John Ramsey, what he claps back and how they're still pointing fingers at him. But if it was Burke, and Deception Detective has a different theory altogether. If it was Burke, guys, which I talked about a lot in the past about it being Burke and the family covering up for it. If that's the case, Burke is still alive and well. All right. The only person that's not in this case is the mom, which passed away, not knowing what happened. Or did she? Did she have to do with that? The DNA. Now, this DNA advancement in the ransom note as well, James, I have to tell you about the DNA advancement because they're using the same advancement that they've used in the case of like Kohberger, which before Kohberger was who? The Golden State Killer, right? New forensic genealogy updates. And they've helped solve other cases. So can they help solve this case? Let's jump into this first with the court TV so you can hear. And then we'll get to the John and Deception Detective. Okay, this is all new. This came out 2 days ago, and now we're going to talk about it.
And Tommy, I want to turn to another.
Okay, we're going to turn to another.
We've talked about on court TV for a long time the case of JonBenet Ramsey.
I believe that the case will be solved with DNA technology.
And it's wild because he says that and he's all for it, but you're going to see throughout this entire episode people still pointing fingers at him. And you say, why, Jay? Why would they point the fingers if they were cleared? Why? All right. Well, we'll get that today answered for you.
You know, Lou Smith, the legendary detective, was brought in to work on this case by the DA early on, out of retirement. Told me, he said, this case will be solved by DNA.
So nearly 3 decades later, John Ramsey continues speaking on the murder of.
And like I said, it's the strangest thing because it doesn't matter if Burke was tested or John was tested. They're doing genetic genealogy to really narrow down. And with the advancements that 3 decades later, something they tested, they were not happy with. All right. Something they did, something they preserved, something they missed is being looked at with a fresh set of eyes. And that's why it feels different this year than it ever has before. And again, you're going to hear all this today.
His daughter, JonBenet, and now police have a new update in the case, but still no suspect. Friday, the Boulder Police Department released a video on the investigation of the 6-year-old's death in an effort to find some new leads. Police Chief Stephen Redfern assures the public that JonBenet's death remains a top priority while sharing some new steps like DNA testing.
Last year, we gave you an update about a lot of the work that has been done.
And again, I showed you a little bit of clip earlier for you to get an idea that this is real. This is happening, and they are very hopeful, which can be, you guys, we can see an arrest for Burke. We can see an arrest for John Ramsey, even though he's saying that. Don't let that fool you, what he says about the DNA testing, because that shouldn't fool you. After being over here with guilty of crime, you should know that everybody's a suspect until they're not. All right.
To solve this crime. And those efforts have continued. This case remains a top priority for our department. This past year, our detectives have conducted several new interviews, as well as re-interviewed individuals based on tips that we've received. We've also collected new evidence and tested and retested other pieces of evidence to generate new leads. Techniques and technology constantly evolve. This is especially true with technology related to DNA testing. Detectives continue to consult with outside experts from across across the country.
Now, again, pay attention to this because these are absolutely new leads and new ways to test the DNA evidence. And although they're not giving us exactly, come on, guys, y'all can read between the lines. Has to be someone they knew. They had a seller. Would it be a stranger know that? No. And you know that 75%, even higher of the time, 75 to 90% of all crimes are somebody that you've come in contact with, somebody you know, a family member, or somebody that's, you know, in the same vicinity as you, goes to your school, whatever. It's not just some random, you know, phantom person. So that I absolutely agree that it's going to be someone that they know, somebody that was at the parties. It's all right, but let's go.
As well as our state and federal partners, to strategize and explore all options when it comes to evidence testing.
Okay, now the chief said the department has also been in contact with the Ramsey family. They urge anyone with knowledge of the crime to please come forward. So this update that really didn't give any details is what got us talking. And so
it really didn't, but at the same time it did, because if you listen to what they're actually saying, it says a lot. And that's why I'm so glad Deception Detective also picked this up, because you'll see what I'm saying if you haven't just yet.
What I was wondering, and I want to ask all of you, do you think there's a method to this madness, to have the chief essentially go on, you know?
And listen, I've always had that theory that it was either Burke or possibly the father. Somebody was covering up a lot. Okay. And I did have that theory at one point that Burke did it. They didn't want to lose both of their children, and so they covered it up.
On television, online, on, you know, wherever this update was played publicly, and basically say we have an update and working on it, but there was nothing specific. We're talking about DNA testing. Well, what DNA? Whose did you find? Who are you in? You know, it just, is there a reason for this? I just wonder, are they looking to surveil someone in particular? Are they trying to put this out there to maybe prompt someone to act so they can take a look at what they do? Manuel Gomez, you're joining the conversation. What do you say, please?
Well, I did some severe research into this case, and I have.
And now remember, guys, you say if John Ramsey had been less affluent, he likely would have been the top suspect. SA, motivated crime, last with the victim, first to find the body. But it's interesting that they didn't find the body the first time around. Wouldn't the parents have an idea of where she might be if they knew where that was? All right, yeah, no, they haven't. They actually have. They've gone to the full extent, and you'll hear that they went to that extent to clear even John, but now they're re-looking, they're retesting, they're redoing, and they're putting new evidence with a fresh set of eyes.
I have to tell you, there is DNA found, new DNA found on the little girl's underwear, okay?
All right, did you guys hear that? There was new DNA found on JonBenet Ramsey's underwear. That's a big piece of evidence right there.
On the little girl's underwear, okay? And this is what they were referring to about the DNA. He didn't come publicly and say it, but you notice he was talking more about the DNA, and that's the fact that I found out. Now, what I did know is they haven't researched the aspects they need to, and that is my recommendation and solution to help solve this case is, one, take the new DNA that they found, run it through all the jail databases. Now, it's going to take an investigator anywhere between 2 to 3 months to run the entire United States. But you would run millions of people at one time to see if their DNA matches with the DNA.
Now, listen, the reason this prompted them to do this, and this is what I've been reading and looking at, the Gilgo Beach DNA rulings, right? All of these years, Gilgo Beach, more things coming along, more people. The Gilgo Beach DNA ruling is what gave them hope and what techniques they're using for the JonBenet Ramsey case. So if that gives you any perspective, then there it is.
They found on the clothes of that little girl. Second, okay, on this case, I don't believe that it was just a pedophile that attacked the girl, but I do believe, unfortunately, that the father was involved. And due to the fact of his cordial, nonchalant.
Like I said, this is new evidence, and yet you're going to hear throughout this episode people saying, stop attacking him, but yet you got this guy that's telling you that there's new evidence on the panties, telling you that he thinks that John is involved, even though he's been cleared. How does that happen? Well, because whatever technique they're using and whatever new DNA that they found, well,
attitude when he found the baby, and when he brought up the body from the basement, the body, he asked, is she dead? Now, she had rigor mortis. Her eyes were white. Her body was completely pale. Why would you ask that when you found your kid? You'd be crying. The guy was nonchalant. There's something highly suspicious about him as well.
Mm-hmm. You know, meanwhile, I read Dr. Cyril Weck's book on the case. I've talked to him about it. God rest his soul, one of the greatest forensic pathologists of our time. He was highly suspicious of the father.
Yep.
We're going to get into
the Golden State Killer is what blew this wide open for many cases. All right, the Golden State Killer. They did the DNA testing across the 1, 2, 3andMe, etc. And then, bam, they started using that. It just takes one case to be progressive, and they open their eyes and they share it with each other.
More of Dr. Weck's findings later this week on the show. But in terms of what investigators are doing here, Tommy Pope, do you think this could be a prompt? Like, are they trying to prompt someone? Because they said nothing in terms of what's new. We don't know what's new. You just came on and said you're working on the case still. Could this be, you know, deliberate?
A law enforcement tactic, in other words. Yeah, I think it could be. I will say it's an irony, Julie. You and I were talking when I saw you.
And I do wonder if that person is shaking in their boots, whoever might have assaulted her, if they're still alive. I mean, this is, this is an international case that we're talking about that's been going on for decades. All right. I'm sorry, but I think it's horrible that people are pointing the finger at the father. I think it's terrible to keep disparaging the family. And that's why we're going to have John's response to that today. Everybody doesn't think that, but certain people do. So we're playing both sides of it here. We're playing devil's advocate, and we're listening to what John's saying. We're not nobody's ruling anybody 100% in, but I do think this is a tactic to definitely stir things up.
Studio in Atlanta, how I got invited to New York to talk about the JonBenet Ramsey case like 30 years ago, and the media was saying, why are they not more forthcoming? And I was explaining that sometimes law enforcement has to keep it close to the vest. And I joked that I never got invited back to that group after I told them the media didn't need to know more. But I think, we do have new technology. I can remember a death penalty case I tried right when DNA first started, and it was that RFLP DNA, and you had to have about the sample size of a quarter